Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, welcome. So we're here today with extreme historical hobbies that sound made up but aren't. So I wanted to do a history video for today, and because I'm not feeling too well, I thought, let me do something that sounds fun. So this one kind of like combines two things that I think sounds fun, history and hobbies that apparently are so extreme that they sound made up. So I guess we will see, what they are. As a kid, I actually went to a torture museum in Germany, and it was actually really fascinating because, obviously, you see, the typical tortures that you see on TV, sure, that you see in cartoon movies, oh yeah, we're gonna torture you by tickling you, but, actually going to that torture museum actually opened my eyes a little bit on just, fascination in regards to, how effed up humans used to be, and still are to a degree, but how much they used to be effed up. So I'm actually very excited to see what this one is. Now I'm assuming it's not just that, it's just hobbies. So we'll see what those hobbies consist of. With that said, let me know if you have any recommendations of things that you want me to react to. Currently, my recommendation list is completely empty. So if you have a recommendation, it's likely to be reacted to sooner than later. With all of that said, go check out the original channel, which I will have linked in the description down below. And I'd say beyond that, let's get ready to rock and roll. Let me just put it in 1080p, and let's get ready to start.
When you're bored, you have the luxury of playing video games, downloading a book, or pulling up a YouTube video about how strange history can be. You should probably do more of that last one.
Subscribe.
But back in the day, folks had to get creative when looking for ways to pass time. And, I mean, alarmingly creative.
Oh, no.
Today, we're going to tell you about some extreme hobbies from the past that sound made up, but totally aren't.
Okay.
But before we get started, why not subscribe to the Weird History channel and leave a comment letting us know what other historical pastimes you would like to hear about. Okay, get ready to dust off that Pog collection, because it's time for some weird history.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Humanity's obsession with the macabre did not begin with 80s slasher films or classic Hollywood monster pictures. It turns out people have always enjoyed gruesome get-togethers, and few are more ghoulish than mummy unwrapping parties. While the word mummy is classically associated with ancient Egypt, we're actually looking quite a bit further ahead on the calendar to 19th century Victorian England, where the richest, most influential weirdos would buy up all the mummies they could get their hands on. Important members of high society would be invited to view these cadavers, ironically, in the middle of the living room, being unwrapped and often degraded in front of a light audience.
To be fair, though, mummies were well preserved, so it wouldn't necessarily. It probably would still, but I don't think it would smell as bad as as a normal corpse. If you just dug up a corpse and got that out of a casket, I think mummies, because they would be well preserved, it might not be as bad, so to speak. I don't know. I've never unearthed a dead body, so I wouldn't know. That's not on my to-do list.
For dusty skeletons.
Not yet.
You had to possess a bit of showmanship to host one of these eloquently eerie soirees. Like famous surgeon Thomas Pettigrew, who was renowned for being one of the best mummy undressers in the business.
My goodness.
That is, before criticism caused the parties to fall out of fashion.
Morgue visits.
Normally, the morgue is reserved for people with temperatures well below 98.6 degrees. But 19th century Paris was able to turn, "Hey kid, you want to see a dead body?" into a booming business
that accent
In
is
1886,
terrible.
a newspaper
Atrocious.
article reported on a 4-year-old girl who died from only a bruise on her hand. Morbidly curious members of the public flocked to the morgue to get a look at the poor deceased soul on display. That frenzy is believed to have shifted the morgue business from a way to identify the remains of loved ones into an exciting pastime for French citizens and British visitors alike. By the end of the 19th century,
I'm sorry that I'm gonna have to pause it here. It reminds me a little bit. It's obviously very macabre, but it reminds me a little bit of when I was still doing my law degree. I used to go to, because my university was very close to the courts, and you could just walk in and watch trials happen, but for very serious cases, What court was it? I want to say it was a criminal court. I'm not 100% on sure now because like there were like four different courts right next to each other. You know, family courts, criminal courts, so on and so forth. But I think it was the criminal court. They actually had like a separate room you'd go into. So like, you know, you would go into that room and you'd be sheltered off completely from like the judge and the accused, so on and so forth. And you'd watch behind a window, and they couldn't see you, but you could see them. And the whole purpose of that was that like they couldn't identify you, and if you were there, you know, so if you were a witness to the case, you could actually look at, you know, the people that are involved in their natural habitat, so to speak, and identify them. And that's kind of what this reminds of, like just being behind the screen and just like seeing the almost like a play go on right in front of you. And you're just like there, just sitting down, taking notes, enjoying the show, so to speak. You know, that's kind of what this reminded me of a little bit, just with the windows and everything, and you just see people behind it, just like watching, almost like goods in a shop. You know, that's kind of what it is, but it's obviously a lot more macabre this year than goods on a shop.
The morgue was considered a must-see destination in France. Bodies were displayed in morgue windows for all to see, sometimes for several days at a time. Obviously, this practice has since fallen out of fashion, but it paved the way for modern-day mannequins. Just kidding. Or am I?
Alright. Civil War
These days,
picnics.
a Civil War picnic is where you and the rest of your 5th grade history class go to watch a bunch of part-time actors pretend to shoot each other in period-accurate clothing. But back during the Battle of Bull Run,
Americans have some
the
fun
first land
things.
battle of the American Civil War, many were able to witness the real thing while enjoying a light snack. Many people went out and set up picnics near the battlefield to witness the combat firsthand, convinced that the Union forces would rapidly claim victory. Nobody quite knows why anyone thought it would be a good idea to enjoy a basket of finger food while their friends and neighbors shot cannons at each other.
Yeah, dying
but
left, right,
suffice
and
it to
center.
say, their decision to treat the conflict like a croquet match was swiftly regretted once the actual fighting got underway. Reports of spectators rushing to escape have been described as utter chaos. Roads were clogged with broken down carriages trying to get away from the action in what became known as the Great Skedaddle.
Sorry, that's one thing that I really do want to get into. Maybe not next week, but maybe the week after, or maybe a few weeks after. I really want to get into like American history, because I know obviously my European history very well. I know my Mongolian history quite well, and I know like a lot of like more ancient like Greek, Mesopotamian, so to speak. I know that side of history decent or moderately well. Not on the same degree that I know like relatively modern European history, but American history I'm very unfamiliar with. Same with like Latin American history, also very unfamiliar with. So those are like two areas that I do want to like learn more about. But we'll see. Like I said, probably not next week, but it's definitely on my like to-do list to like learn more, understand more about it.
Before the NFL, the Super Bowl, and Tom Brady's televised divorce, there was mob football. Most of modern football was derived from this early version of the sport, originally created in the 12th century. Much like today, the game was played with a pigskin ball, which would be fought over by two opposing teams trying to score a goal.
Interesting.
Unlike today's game, however, you had to score 3 times before receiving 1 point. Jeez, their injury reports
sounds a lot like rugby.
Show. Other than that, there was pretty much only one rule. No murdering. It was a brutal game, less a sport than a segment on Jackass. But its popularity can't be denied, as it stands the test of time over 900 years later. Yep, that's right. The original version of Mob Ball is still played in the UK, with 2-day-long matches held every year on Shrove Tuesday and Ash Wednesday for thousands of fans.
I've never seen that before, or heard of it before, and I live in the UK, so hey.
Around the 17th century, the hottest accessory wasn't jewelry or fancy clothes. It was a literal flaming barrel of tar you would carry down the street. Wonder if you can wear one on a chain, like Flava Flav. The bizarre tradition
How?
dates back centuries in England's Ottery St. Mary.
I need
where
an
the custom of
explanation here.
carrying flaming barrels of tar down the road has been time-honored since 1605, just after Guy Fawkes' infamous gunpowder plot. The tar barrels are meant to
Actually,
symbolize
remember
the
the 5th of
36
November.
barrels of gunpowder
What day is
used
it
by
today?
Fawkes in his attempt to blast Parliament sky
3rd.
high, like a gender reveal party. Originally, the barrels were rolled down the street. Today, the barrels are carried down the streets on the backs of giddy participants.
I've also never seen this in my life before. Shin kicking. I think I've heard of this one
The
before.
first Cotswold Olympic shin-kicking event was held in 1612 near Chipping Campden. For many in the
don't know
English
why, but I have
countryside,
heard
the
of
hobby
this one
is still
before.
going strong over 400 years later. The game is an offshoot of what is called Cotswold wrestling, with the aim being to trip an opponent by hooking their legs. It has since evolved to include players kicking shins, hitting, and tussling until
People will
the
turn
opponent
anything
is down
and
on the
everything
ground.
into a sport.
Basically, it's
Just
the
accept it.
pastime of little brothers and retired shuffleboard players drunk on Irish
Just
coffee.
accept it.
Famed lawyer Robert Dover is believed to be the father of Olympic shin kicking. The event went on for nearly 200 years straight before being suspended in 1642 during the English
Scumbags.
Civil War. But shin kicking was revised in 1965 and has gained amazing traction ever since, with thousands of participants joining in year after year.
You know what? I want to try like a combat sport.
Back in 1951, the detonation of
kicking?
an atomic
No,
warhead
thank you.
above the Nevada deserts gave birth to a fad known as atomic tourism. Like today,
That
Las
sounds
Vegas was no
incredibly
stranger to
stupid.
capitalizing on profit when opportunity
With all the
arose.
radiation.
So the powers that be wasted no time on branding Vegas as the country's atomic tourist capital. Throughout the
boy.
Strip in the 1950s, you could find showgirls wearing mushroom cloud-inspired
Oh,
clothing,
boy.
atomic cocktails being served at the bars, and even areas where one could go watch a live detonation for themselves from a relatively safe distance. Sort of like a
Relatively.
Disney character breakfast with the most terrifying weapon ever constructed. Fans swept up in the hype would frequent Vegas in the 50s to view
I'd go
the
there, to be
atomic
fair, but
clouds,
it sounds
buy
incredibly
collectible
stupid.
postcards or calendars, and breathe in a crisp lungful of fallout.
Woohoo!
Eventually, the limited test ban was put into place in 1963, which prohibited above-ground nuclear testing.
That makes a ton of
The
sense.
fad may have been brief, but the memories and radiation poisoning will last a lifetime.
Killer ceramic figurines.
During the Industrial Revolution, the emerging
What is
middle
this?
class in
Madame
Victorian
Tussauds?
England found themselves with expendable income and nary a Beanie Baby or Funko Pop figure in sight to spend it on.
Damn it.
In their absence, Staffordshire Factory's colorful figurines became the must-have collectibles of the day,
Okay.
featuring likenesses of mermaids, pirates, and even a depiction of a jealous wife. These porcelain statuettes were highly sought after by collectors.
Okay.
But by far, the hottest statues to put on your shelf were those of infamous murderers. Notorious slashers at the time were forever immortalized as 6-inch ceramic figurines.
I see.
Sort of like an edgelord Precious Moments collection. And because Victorian England already had quite an obsession with the macabre, the statues sold like hotcakes. You could collect them all, including grisly figures like the deranged farmhand James Bloomfield Rush.
I wonder what's
or
worse.
William Corder, who perpetrated the Red Barn murder. People still buy up Staffordshire ceramics to this very day.
I wonder what's worse, having like figurines of murderers or having figurines of anime waifus. That's a close one. I don't know which one is worse.
Another way Victorian England indulged its obsession with the macabre was the headless photograph fad, which is exactly what it sounds like.
Okay.
Likely concocted by pioneering photographer Oscar Gustavo Raylander in
Photoshop?
1856, headless photography was one of the early forms of photographic manipulation. The method involved working with the original negatives as well as cutting and pasting.
Makes sense.
With actual scissors and paste, not just hitting Control-C.
That makes sense.
The main challenge was to make the separate images appear as though one photo was taken. The other challenges involved explaining why you had a photo of a headless person. Experimental photographers were able to use
sounds
various
really cool.
methods to create legitimate-looking decapitations, all in the name of morbid fun. Novelty photographs such
Sounds
as
really
these were
fun.
commissioned during the 19th century and required superior photography skills in order to pull off. These were the pioneer days before Adobe Photoshop, when skilled artists would have to complete their work in actual Photoshops.
Nowadays, literally 2 buttons and it's done. Cut.
The ancient Egyptians held many animals in high regard, but none more so than those in the cat family. Egyptian royalty had large cats, such as lions and cheetahs, which they used in their hunting parties or simply kept as exotic pets. There
I
wasn't
want
a
a
Department of
tiger.
Fish and Wildlife back then. Anyone was able to keep a menagerie of exotic pets like a Miami Coke Baron. The favorite was the cheetah, which held a special reverence to Egypt's people.
Yeah, makes
You
sense.
could find cheetahs in many influential households throughout the region. It was a popular pastime to house-train cheetahs, since they could be used to hunt mice and snakes, as well as big game. You know, big game. The neighbor who likes to work on his Trans Am in the morning. Cheetahs were so revered that you could often find them buried alongside their owner, which really isn't too different from modern cat owners, is it?
Is anyone here familiar with like the YouTube channels like Mike something? The guy's got like 2 cats. Basically, just search for pulling a tiger's tooth, and like the first thing you come across is his video. The guy's an absolute shad. He's got like 2 tigers at the moment. He used to have 3, but he's got 2 tigers at the moment, and he just like does different experiments with them. And when they were like younger, he used to like sleep with them, have them in his bed right next to his dogs and his cats and everything. And there's like this one video where like the tiger is like just sleeping, and you just see that like the camera just pans to the dog, and the dog is just like. It just had the roughest night ever, like just making sure that the tiger is not going to wake up or anything over that set. It's a really fun. He's got a really fun YouTube channel, and as I said, if you just search for pulling a tiger's tooth, there's like 2 videos of his that you'll find. One where he literally just goes into a tiger's mouth and it's like, and just rips it out of like a half-grown tiger, like that big of a creature sort of thing, and the other one where like. He basically actually just does the same. Like, gets the tiger out of the cage, and it's just like, got it. I want a tiger, just because of that.
Sir James Carey may have proven that making goofy faces can be a lucrative career. But did you know it's also a competitive sport? Originating in 1267 at the Egremont Crab Fair in the UK,
That guy on the left is
gurning, or contorting one's face,
Ooh,
was
that's a
created
winner.
to celebrate the beginning of the crab apple harvest season.
What
Participants
now?
would push their faces through a horse collar while trying to gurn the best face, or the worst face. We're still a bit iffy on the wording. They called it gurning through a braffin. Sounds like a Sting lyric. The contests are still held today in the UK during mid-September, when the world's best gurners travel to the small town to see who can turn the best gurn.
Alright. Water jousting.
When a sport gets boring, drop it in the water. As the old saying goes, that was the hope the creators of water jousting had when they took traditional jousting and moved the whole operation to the river. It is believed that water jousting dates as far back as ancient Egypt and was popularized in France around 570 BC as a source of entertainment.
I think
for
I might have
French
actually
royalty.
seen this been
The
done
idea is similar
before.
to normal jousting,
I
except
wanna
it is
say.
played while standing in a boat on a river instead of riding
Maybe.
a horse. Oarsmen would row toward the opponent while the jouster tried to knock them into the water. An oarsman? No motorboats or airboats. Are we sure it's not supposed to be less boring? Predominant matches were held along the Saône River in Lyon, where it is rumored that Queen Elizabeth I even watched one of the tournaments.
Okay.
The hobby is still practiced today in France and remains quite popular. You can visit the country in August during the Saint Louis Festival to watch teams joust each other to the soundtrack of medieval songs.
Okay.
Just as their ancestors intended.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Which crazy old hobby would you like to try? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other...
Alright. Well, that was it's my first time coming across this YouTube channel, and I must say I very much enjoyed that. Very much enjoyed that video. I'll also say this. A lot of these just sound very macabre, but I understandably so, because like back then, if you're rich, what do you get into? You get into art. You get into music. I mean, it depends obviously what time frame we're talking about. I'm thinking like 1800s. 1800s, you've got so many different, musicians coming up, with the rise of classical music, the rise of Baroque, really, the end of Baroque, really. Because Renaissance music wasn't that big. Baroque music is really when it like kicked off, I want to say, with like the Bach era, and then after that, obviously you've got the rise of classical music, and obviously the rise of romantic music, and I want to say like around Bach, with his introduction to like Baroque music, and the advancements into classical music, musicians essentially became superstars, and that's basically where all the rich peoples spend their time to do. The hobbies were basically just listening to music. I mean, it's not very different than today. It's just a different type of music, I guess. And yeah, I just found it very interesting. Obviously, that's like the rich people, but like you always have to think about like the less wealthy individuals. What they would do, and obviously they're a lot more limited in what they can do as hobbies back then, because one, they have to work, and two, they don't have the necessary funds to do something more extravagant. So it is actually quite interesting. Very interesting video, and what I like about this one is actually it dates in multiple historical periods, so it's not just it isn't just all in like the same time frame or time period. It's all different ones, and I like that quite a lot, I must say, because that just to me just makes a more interesting video. If it was all like, just the same time frame, like all from like the 1700s, it'd be very limited in what the hobbies could be. But no, this video actually had like a lot of variety between like what is possible, what was possible in like much earlier years, so on and so forth, to like more recent time frames. So I very much enjoyed that. But as I said, let me know what you want me to react to next. Leave it in the comment section down below. If you enjoy my videos, be sure to like, comment, favorite, and subscribe. I think I messed it up, didn't I? But be sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and ring that bell. And yeah, with that said, I'll see you all next time. Until then, have a nice day. Peace.